Welcome to this lecture. Now we have the another part in our socket programming, and that is our client side. So we have nearly finished our server side, though we haven't included any backdoors, like you may say the message backdoor or command executing backdoor, or basically it can be also the screenshots. We haven't covered that. We'll just cover in upcoming lectures. But before that, we have to see how this socket is going to work, or basically how this communication is going on, because we have written one command to list this connection. We can just try that command in order to see the connection that is happening between this client and a server. So we have to now code for the client section. So for the client section in the virtual machine, I have installed this Windows and it is up and running over here. I have made use of this Notepad++ to code with the Python because it is lightweight, so I do not need to install the PyCharm over here because the PyCharm is more heavier than this Notepad++. So I've just installed the Notepad++. We'll just run our Python code from this command line, and I have installed, that is the Python. You could see in here I have just downloaded the Python, the latest version of Python, which is 3.7 in this Windows machine. So let's start coding over here. So as always, the first is to import, and I'll just say that first of all you have to create, obviously you have to create the file. I have created the new file, backdoor.py. So the next thing I want to do is import some of this module. So before that, what you need to do is we have to just install some of the modules over here, and that should be done with the pip command. So what is basically the modules are this pywin32, and this pyscreeze is basically for the screenshot. So I'll just tell you that you can include, or basically you can download package all this with one go, and this WMI is basically for the Windows management instrumentation that will just track everything that we do in this machine. So let's see, and let's go here, that is in our Windows machine, and let's open our command prompt, and let me just open again. And here let me say something, that is first Python. In order to install that package, python yum pip, and install is the command to install the command, or basically to install the packages, and that is pywin32 and WMI. So you can simply say pywin32 pyscreeze, and next one is WMI. So let's hit enter and install that package first, because you have to install it, otherwise it is not going to be imported. And the next thing is to open your this Notepad++, and we'll just use some of this library that we just installed. So first one will be the system OS, and I'll also use the platform. We'll use the time in order to use that sleep module, and you should get this C types that is installed, and basically this is only some processes, and we have seen the SOP processes to execute the command in the Kali, or basically to execute the command in the client side. So this SOP process is basically to just call that methods like call method, popen method. So this will just execute commands in this terminal. So next thing what I want to do is the threading, and the last one maybe I want to install is WMI, which we just installed here. So after that I want to get the new command, and basically I want to import the another, that is win32, and this should be installed if you just install this package, which is right here, pywin32, and another is the win error and win32 event. Okay, it is right here, win32 event, and let me just write one more, and that should be your last one, that is win32 in, that should be maybe crypt. Let's see if this gets error, we'll just rectify. So the last thing what I want to import is from this win registration, I want to import everything. And I'll just tell you when we are coding that what is the importance of each of these. So before that, let me show you all of these over here. We'll just make this socket to just get the communication. OS is to directory file management. We work with this, and system and the platform. The main important here is the sub process, because this is going to make our backdoor to be executed in this machine, and this WMI is for the privilege of this Windows machine, and threading is for the thread operations. So let's start coding some of these manually. So first of all, I'll just say string host, and this host should be your Kali Linux IP address. So I'll just say 192.168.1.11 is my Kali address, IP address. You can also check by typing ifconfig. And the next one is obviously the port. You should guess now, and the port will be 4444, which the Kali will be listening to. The next thing I want to do is to get the path. So let's see what the path we want to get. So that is from this OS module. I'll just say path, and it should be real path. We should have something that is real path method. And one of the biggest disadvantage of this Notepad++ is basically it doesn't have accurate command suggestion. So if you use PyCharm, that will be interesting because it gives everything that you need. And installing the package is obviously very much easier in the case of PyCharm. So basically what we are doing here is we are just getting this argument for the system, that is to get the file path. So basically this is to get the file path. So next is I'll just use this temporary folder to get the temporary path. So if you want the temporary path, there is another command in the OS that is going to be the environment command. And here we have to just give the app data, because if you know, in this machine or in any machine, or basically in the Windows machine, the temporary is after this app data. So we have just inserted this app data. Now integer buff, it is basically the maximum digit we want to include is 1204 bytes. So next thing I want to do is handle the mutex, or basically the function to prevent the multiple instances. So now before implementing the mutex in our program, let me know you about the mutex. So what is mutex? Mutex is basically the mutual exclusion. So what happens is basically, let me just take an example. Let me say I create this mutex, and next thing is I just update something that may be list. Okay, if I just update list, and now if I release that mutex, which is obviously the mutual exclusion, so this may be the operation. So let me just take example over here, that is saying this is the 3 operations that we do here. And what is about this mutex? So first of all, mutex is basically a function. Basically it will just prevent the multiple instances. That means if this is the operation update list, then this update list can be carried out or can be performed only by the single thread. So that is very important of mutual exclusion, that is no multiple can use or no multiple thread can use this single list. So this is important because we want the operation to be done by only single thread. That means we can prevent now multiple instances. So in order to prevent multiple instances, we make use of a mutex, because thread can be used to do multiple tasks at a time, but I want only single thread to use this event to prevent from the multiple instances. So let's say we want to use mutex, or basically you can also check the documentation for the mutual exclusion to know more about the mutex, but the main idea is we want only one single thread to execute that operation to prevent from the multiple instances. So we'll just make use of this win32 event, which is just included over there. And now we want to use this create mutex method, and here the parameter is none first and 1, and the third is your mutex. So the mutex is PA. Okay, so it should be PA, give this, and mutex and xp4. So this will be the way in order to create the mutex. You can check the documentation, there is nothing to say over here. It is simple the argument that is predefined with the mutex. Just remember that mutex is going to prevent the multiple instances so that single thread can execute certain operation. So next thing what we can do is to see if this mutex is executing or not. So in order to do that, we'll make use of this window 32 API and get the last error method, and over here we'll see if the error is already existing or not. So in order to see if the error is already existing, we have this win error that we just imported from here, and we'll just check now if error is already existed or not. So if error already, and there is command that is saying exist, so if there is already error exist, then what you're gonna do is, let me give the tab, and in that case mutex should be none. Otherwise, or basically if this is the case, if we just get the error, then you have to exit. There is no chance because there is error, we have to exit from that. So this is the way to just create the mutex, to try the mutex on your machine. So next thing is to try to see the Sandboxie. So let me say you first the Sandboxie, about the Sandboxie. So let me open here, and this is the program that is going to be Sandboxie. So what happens is, basically if you download any program, maybe let me say if I download any program from maybe torrent, so it can have some malicious code inserted over there. So if I download any file that look legitimate for me, but that can have any malicious code inserted, that can have also payload inserted with that file. So in order to just make your harmful file directly inserted to your system, there comes this program that is Sandboxie. So what happens is, instead of just directly downloading and installing your program to the system which can contain some malicious code, first of all it will run on this Sandboxie program, and it will just see if that is the genuine application or not. If that is the genuine application, then it will directly download, or basically it will install to the main system. If that is the program that contains some malicious code, and in that case it won't harm to the system because that will be run in the Sandboxie application. So that happens basically if you just download any application that is from the malicious website. So instead of just harming for your computer, it will download it on the Sandboxie, and it won't get any harmful code injected to your computer. So this is the application. So first of all, instead of just downloading our backdoor directly to the system, we have to now set this detect Sandboxie. Okay, first of all it should be detect. Let's go over here, let's make some spaces, and I'll just say detect first and Sandboxie. So this will be the method. So what we are going to do over here is, we'll see if there is Sandboxie installed or not. So I'll just say okay, try, and here we have to first of all download that library. So I'll just say library handle, and in order to download any DLL files, we have this ctypes module in the Python, and in order to download we have this win_dll, and I'll just say load library method. So what this load library does, it will just take an argument in the form of DLL or any library. So the library that we are going to use for this Sandboxie is SBIE_DLL, and it should be with the extension DLL because this is the DLL file. Let me just close. So this is the library, or this is the file that we are going to download in our window, so that we'll just install it, or we'll just install our backdoor in this Sandboxie so that our computer won't get harmed. So next thing is to return, and I'll just say return me the Sandboxie, which is obviously the string over here. And now let me just close this first. So this will be instances, so let me just close this first, and after that let me just return this from this method, which is Sandboxie. So I have just misspelled it, it should be I over here. So we have now, this is basically the instances of the Sandboxie. If we just download this DLL, it will just return that Sandboxie. And I have already told that installing a backdoor directly to that system will be very dangerous. So first of all, we'll just see that in this program that is called the Sandboxie, and basically it gives a sandbox which is to download the application and see if that backdoor works perfectly on that Sandboxie. So next thing is to catch the exception, and if there is any exception that we catch and we don't know what the exception we are going to catch, so simply we'll write exception because we don't know name. That means we'll simply try to catch any exception that comes and we'll just return empty string. So we have defined this Sandboxie, and basically just remember this is only the application where we are going to run our backdoor. So next is to detect the virtual machine. So let me just write some of these commands so that it will be easier for us after we just try to connect to the system. So I'll just give the tab again, and what this method is going to get us is the information about our virtual machine, because if you know we are going to run in this Windows, or basically you can also have the Mac or Linux in the virtual machine. So this method will get the information about the virtual machine and the OS that it has installed. So let's go back again, and in this detect VM, next thing what we are going to do is, if you remember, we have installed this package which is saying window management instrumentation. We have to make use of that module now. So here what I'm going to do is I'll just say we object of WMI, because I have to instantiate that object, and it is this class which is WMI. So now what you are going to do is you have to go to the query of the WMI, because we want the information about the virtual box, we want to detect the virtual machine. So in order to do that, you have the query in the WMI. So you can also search for WMI in the Google and get the information about this window management instrumentation. It will just tell us about the information, like it will just get the information about the status of local or remote computer system and the configuration and everything about the permissions. So this is the window management instrumentation, and we have to get the information of a virtual machine from this object now. So I'll just say for, not from, it is for, and I'll just make one interesting variable here, that is object disk drive. So if you just see, this is giving us a clarity what this variable is about. So it is about the disk drive that is installed in our virtual machine. So I'll just say object of WMI, and we have this method which is the query method in this object WMI. And if you see the query of this WMI, it is similar to that of SQL. If you ever have used the SQL, we have there the select statement. In order to select everything, we use this star method, and we use this from because we want everything from window 32 disk drive. So let me just type real quick. So what we did was we just made a simple query here saying that I want everything about the disk drive in that virtual machine. So next thing is we just give a tab again here because we are inside this for. Okay, I've just left here colon, and let me give the colon, let me give the tab, and now over here we have to now get the virtual box. So if virtual box is in, basically what we're taking here is we want to give the information, or we want to source the information of a virtual box in this object disk drive. So in order to do that, we'll first see this object disk drive, and inside that we have this caption option, and we have to convert this to the lower because we have seen here this is virtual box is all in lower, so we don't want any confusion with this string name. So we'll see that, or we can also search for the virtual. So this is to search for this virtual disk in that installed drive, and it will be also in this object. Okay, it is obj object disk drive and caption again and lower. So we are just searching for this string, and if we just get that, we want to return, you should guess that is your virtual machine. So I'll just say I want to return my virtual machine. So let's do that, and let's go up on here. Else, in the else part, or basically after maybe here, if we didn't get any information, we have to return something from this function. And if there is no information about the virtual machine, what you are going to do is we'll simply return that is empty string, which will be in the case of the live window machine. But in our case, we are just running in the virtual machine. We'll just get information about the virtual machine. So this will be wrap for this lecture. This has been long lecture learning about some of these modules and starting to build our own client. And in the next lecture, we'll see how we can connect to the server and do some operations. So see you in the next one.